promised Adventures with the Cherokee that I would do a review on this boat about 1.5 years ago, and I never did it. So here we are, boat review on the Prijon Yukon Expedition. So to start with, the most important thing about this boat that I'm going to show you is the hull, or the underside of the boat. So if you look at it, it's called a Trihedral Hull. You got one plane there, one plane on the flat bottom, and then one plane on the other side. So it's unlike most boats that have a keel or just a round hull or a V hull or anything like that. It's not a pontoon, it's its own thing. It's a trihedral hull. So that trihedral hull is the most important thing to me about this boat, because it gives me the performance I need to do the rivers I'm doing. That allows it to be very loose on the water, like a whitewater boat, so I can maneuver as well as possible with a 14.5-foot boat in swift water, in tight spaces, things like that. Normally on a 14.5-foot boat, you'll have a much more difficult time, number one, in current, and number two, in tight spaces. That trihedral hull gives it the magic, I call it, to get through these rivers, whether they're big water or small water, tight spaces, or just, great voluminous rapids that want to grab that keel or grab edges on a boat and kind of have their way with it. This keeps you loose like a whitewater boat, and it's the only boat out there that has that hull and all the other features for expedition kayaking, and that's what it was designed for. Now, the other important specs on this boat is that it is 14.5 feet long. It is rudder capable. There are some people that are going to tell you that you don't need a rudder if you know how to paddle correctly. Well, my whitewater boat and this boat paddle nearly the same, in that they do not want to go straight on their own at all. There's no keel, there's nothing making them go straight. So yes, I can paddle both of these boats in a straight line, but I'm fighting the boat the whole time I do it, and it doesn't make any sense. They're designed to have a rudder. Put the rudder on there. When you deploy the rudder, you go straight like a laser, like you want to on open water. You can also steer with that if you want. There are people who are going to tell you that rudders do not steer kayaks. The only weird thing about that, though, is that in every craft, be it in water or in the air, in the history of the world, the rudder was used to steer that vessel. But for some reason, there's kayakers that say the rudder is not for steering. Just kind of smile at them and nod. It makes them feel good. The rudder is for steering if you want it to be. I want it to be. I steer with it all the time. Makes sense. So make your own decision. Sometimes people get a little bit lost when they're trying to, I don't know, we'll just leave it at that. So that's the hull. The length of the boat is 14.5 feet. It's pretty wide beam boat, which means how wide is it here at the seat? At the widest point, that's your beam. It's a little wider than like a true making miles super fast sea kayak. So the speed is somewhat lacking. My cruise speed that I can run all day with it is about 3.7, 3.8 miles an hour without a tremendous amount of effort. I can go 4. When you're getting beyond 4 in this boat, you're putting in a lot more effort than you're getting back out, so you're just killing yourself. I don't recommend it. The hatches. So on this style boat, there are a double system. You have the outer plastic cover, and then you have an inner neoprene cover. And they stay bone dry, provided you don't have any sealing issues on your bulkhead or up here around this plastic. One thing you're going to want to look at is this rim right here. Is the black plastic is not part of the yellow plastic, obviously, so there can be water coming through there. I just went ahead and siliconed mine. The front hatch is not that big. The back hatch is pretty voluminous. It's a lot bigger than you would expect on a boat this size. Part of the reason the back hatch is so much bigger than the front, naturally that's usually the case anyway, but in this boat layup, the seat is a little bit further forward than perhaps in some other boats. So what that does is gives you a lot more room in the back for gear and a little less in the front. It all works out. I can get the same amount of gear I can in this and any other boat, if not a little more. There's also a good bit of room here behind the seat. You got about a foot of space there. Also, there's a good bit of room up in front of the pedals up there about a foot for me up there because I'm a little midget with short legs. Alright, so all the things I love about this boat are the, number one, the maneuverability. The plastic itself is thermo-molded plastic. It's not roto-molded. It is a denser, tougher plastic. It's less susceptible to warping issues, which you'll find in some boats. It's impossible to make a plastic product that is impervious to warpage, but I think this is about as close as you're going to get, and the plastic is just incredibly tough. And I've gone thousands of miles in this boat, and it's holding up just fine. These grab handles are very secure, molded in. It is a little quirky having the rudder right there. Sometimes you have to just move it out of the way and carry it, or carry it like that, but it's not a game changer for me. I like basically everything about this boat except a couple things. Number one, the Prijons are not the most comfortable boats stock. At least this one isn't. I haven't used any of their very latest products. The original back band for the boat is that guy. It's not the one you want. Comfort sometimes with these Prijons isn't the highest thing. They're a German company, so function and form, you know, function. It gets you down the river better than any other boat in the world. It looks a little funny sometimes, kind of like a torpedo, and it's not the most comfortable. That's just the bottom line. Alright, now one of the quirky things about Prijons, they have this little scudgeon, I think they call it, something like that. It's basically this piece of plastic that mounts on the back of the boat that holds the rudder assembly. This thing can interact with rocks and pop off, but it's designed to do that so that you don't break the rudder and you don't break the boat. So you can get a new piece of plastic or repair the one depending on what happens very easily, and I've done that several times, as we are pretty boat abusive on some of the runs we do. These little rudder catches, you can see the plastics coming off. I don't think that's the best design ever, but it's what they have on there. I'll usually change to just a block rubber rudder catch right here, and it holds it up above the handle anyway. Whenever that goes bad, I'm gonna switch that out. Alright, there's another weird quirky thing up front, and I know why they did it. It's the ram cap. And one thing about these things, if you drag them backwards a lot over time, little debris gets stuck up in that crack right there, and little by little that will form a bigger gap. And I've seen people on trips pulling their boat backwards, Greg, and grab that on a root and not stop pulling, Greg, and it actually pulls the ram cap off, and then they have a little hole there. Then you have to stop about every, I don't know, 30 minutes and sponge out the front compartment. But like I say, I've just heard of that happening, Greg, before to people, so I've never had any issues with mine. You can see this is the stock one. I've never adjusted it. I've got well over 1,000 miles and hard miles. You just have to be mindful of that. So yes, there are some quirks to it. There is no such thing as a perfect boat, but I would not take any other boat that's ever been made over this one for what I do. Alright, now I want to talk about the modifications I've done to make this boat better for what I do with it. Now, the number one modification you can make to any boat is to name it. Very important. You got to name the boat, and then you have to put stickers on it. So the name of my boat is Nana. The boat was named by my son. He said it looked like a banana, but it was as old as a grandma, so Nana works for both. The stickers can kind of tell a story about where you've been, what you've done. That's Justin down there, All Things Outdoors. He's from Australia. And oh, this is a classic sticker here. Now that's an alpha sticker. I'm not sure if you're aware of what an alpha sticker can do for your boat, but it makes this boat virtually unsinkable, unstoppable, and indestructible. You got to check out Steve over there with Adventure Outdoors. Get your alpha sticker. Keeps me alive. One of the most important things you can do is to make your boat comfortable. Now, these Prijons are not the most comfortable boats when you keep them in stock condition. So what I did is put a Wilderness Systems seat pad in there, a couple pine tree rivets. The rest is just 303, or 3M sprayed rather. And then I made a shell of it with a old trash can. And actually it's a new trash can, but it's just a plastic trash can. I traced the size, put a couple holes there for the leg lifter straps, which is Wilderness Systems stock. And then you got your things, you pull your leg lifters up and get it right. And I also fashioned my own seat back. Now it looks a little crude, but this thing has been sanded with the belt sander and shaped to my back. And you can also bend the metal to get the right lumbar for you. And that thing right there, I can sit in that all day without having to adjust anything. Much better than the stock seat that came. And this one's got well over 1,000 miles and it's holding up just right. Another thing I did on the inside was place a camp pad there, and you can see I need to change it. That'll be something I do here shortly. I've had that in there for several hundred miles anyway, and I've worn the heel pad out on my left side. It's kind of weird, not on the right but on the left. Wonder why that is. Curious. That's weird. I've made some modifications to the deck, namely all this deck rigging. The net is stock and your straps are stock. There are no bungee rigging anywhere on the deck. And I installed all that with pad eyes and ran through the places I already had it and installed more pad eyes. That is a paddle holder. I can show you that in a minute. And then the deck lines going all the way down the boat, something I use. I can grab, boats anywhere. I like to be able to grab a boat with a line. It can be important. I also have prusik on here, so when I sail, when I got my sail hooked up here, I can adjust the sail, hook it up anywhere on there. You can do some other kind of rigging. I also installed a Scotty mount up here on the floor of the deck, and that allows me to place my GoPro right in there. Another thing I do is tether all my cameras and my GPSs to the kayak. The tether keeps you from losing, I don't know, say a camera in a rapid like Molly Shoals, Shane. Another thing I did is mount the ram mount ball back here on the back, so I can have a kind of a stinger arm, a tail boom of sorts, and kind of get a different perspective from behind me while I'm paddling, so people can see what strokes I'm using and whatnot. And let me show you what that looks like. So not only do I run my GoPro up front here, I've got the tail boom GoPro right behind me. I can actuate that with my hand, and that gives me the perspective from the front of the boat. It's worked out great. In the event that I hit something, it just pushes down and won't break anything, namely the GoPro. If something gets really crazy, the ball is supposed to break off the base so it won't tear up your boat. But I just like to keep it where in a rollover event where I interact with some rock or a tree branch, I've had that happen several times, it just folds it all down and you're on your way. But definitely always tether. So next to my GoPro I have my GPS, and it's an eTrex 20X, and I keep it on display all day on the trip computer, which I can then see what my speed, average speed, stop time, moving time, I can see all that and basically just use it like a dashboard in a car. I don't really navigate with that. I do carry all my own maps and pretty much navigate almost solely off the maps. I just use this to maintain some knowledge of how far I've gone today, to continually add on to a whole trip mileage. But it lets me know how fast we're traveling, if we need to move faster, or if we're doing really well, we can slow up a little bit. Important information. Speaking of maps, there's an under deck net, and I put all my maps up in there. Really great place to store them. Another reason I added the deck rigging and the deck lines is so I can add a deck bag. And the net is okay. It's not going to keep stuff where it needs to be in serious water. So I have an overboard deck bag. It's been a good one. Everything's always stayed dry. There's a mostly dry top compartment, but it can get a little damp in there. But the interior of this, it's a roll top dry bag deck net, and it's got 3 nice buckles. That will keep me dry with anything I need to have easy, quick access to on the top of my kayak. because another one of the things about this boat, due to the design, is it's a little bit of a diver versus an upturned bow, which kind of goes over a wave, like a Coast Guard cutter maybe. This one goes through a wave like a submarine. That allows you to keep more control in very difficult waters, and doesn't necessarily just bob over every wave. It'll go right through it. That being the case, you'll get a fair amount of water coming up on your lap and into your chest, and in some water there's no way to avoid it. You're just going to get wet. But on moderate rapids, if you want to have a little drier ride, having a deck bag right here will displace a lot of the water that's wanting to ride over your bow. Another reason for the deck rigging is you can put these bungees on here. It will hold your spare paddle, and that's an important piece of gear. You have to have a way to hold a spare paddle. Stock, there's nothing there. You have to add the bungees, which I did with pad eyes and bungee cord. You've probably seen this style paddle holder before. My Wilderness Systems had it, and I liked it. I put it on this boat, and I don't think I've ever used it. So, you know, some things you put on there you think you're going to use and you don't. What you'll find on a longer trip is that keeping all your electronics going is going to be an issue. You're going to have to figure that out. You got RAV power type banks, smaller power banks, big power banks. But for me, the most viable solution that I found, and I love it, is my voltaic solar panel system. And again, the deck rigging is used to strap the panel on top of the paddle. And that's not going anywhere. I've taken that through everything, class 4, everything. No issues, it doesn't go anywhere, it works. I just run the cord under a bungee into my Nanook box that Voltaic will give you. And inside there is a laptop battery, and that keeps everything going. Alright guys, that pretty much wraps it up. The Prijon Yukon Expedition. Specifically, old trusty Nana here. It's been a fantastic boat. I wouldn't use any other boat that's ever been produced to do the trips I do. There are some other good boats out there, but none of them quite do what this boat does, and they don't make them anymore. Contact Prijon, tell them to bring back the Yukon Expedition. Maybe they can modernize it, but they need to keep producing this boat because it is a engineering marvel. There's not another one out there that does what this boat does, so give it a shot. Prijon Yukon Expedition.